Hello and welcome to the GSBC podcast, a podcast for business, about business in the Greater Springfield region, proudly powered by the Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Matt Taylor-Farrington from Purple Bunny Marketing, and today I'm joined by Beck from McNamara Law. She's back
Hello.
for another podcast episode. So today we're going to talk more around the law side of things and what happens at McNamara Law. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey into law and what led you to become a director at McNamara Law?
Yeah, sure. So I started at the firm straight out of high school. I was 17 years of age. Just dropped my resume in on the off chance there might be something going and
Yes.
got called back for an interview and asked to start on the Monday at that interview and had to say, sorry, I'm going to school this week. So pushed it back a week. But yeah, started straight out of high school, slowly moved my way up the ranks, started studying part-time from home while working full-time. So that was a 7-year journey in itself. And then got admitted and moved up the ranks from solicitor to associate and senior associate, and now here we are as director. So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a lot of effort over that time, especially working full time and studying part time.
Yes.
So that would have been a
very
challenge.
grateful to my parents for bringing me dinners while I'm in the middle of lectures and things like that.
Yes. All right. So what areas of law do you specialise in, and I guess why are they important to you?
Yeah. So our firm as a whole specialise in many different areas of law. So we're a general practice firm doing family law, criminal law, personal injuries, compensation type law, wills and estates, and property conveyancing. But the way our firm operates is each solicitor is an expert in their own field. Yep. So I personally practice in wills and estates. That is all I do.
Yes.
It's an area of law that I really enjoy practicing in.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So why is it important, I guess, then, talking about wills, to have a will actually drafted by a professional like yourself?
Yeah. The amount of wills that I have seen that haven't been drafted by a professional or people who haven't got a will at all.
Yes.
I guess stats show 52% of Australians don't have a will. So that's more than half of us.
Yes.
And they are generally more likely than not the ones that end up before a judge.
Yeah.
So you spend, $1,000 to get your wills and powers of attorney sorted. And if you don't do that, there is a strong likelihood that you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on your death fighting it out in a courtroom.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily mean fighting it out insofar as a dispute about who gets what.
Yes.
It can be something as simple as, like, I have a will at the moment where it wasn't drafted by a professional and it appoints an executor of the will and then it's blank. So it doesn't name any beneficiaries whatsoever.
Yes.
I have another one where they appointed an executor and then for the beneficiary they said as above.
Yeah.
And so the executor argued, well, that means me. But it appointed their spouse as the executor, and if they had passed away, then their children were the executor. So, of course, the children argued, no, that means us. We're directly above. So you're in court having a judge determine who that means.
Yes.
Something so simple.
Yeah, and I guess, it's a bit horrible when a judge is determining it rather than it actually being the wishes of the person.
Yeah.
So,
and it's costly.
Agreed.
Forget about how, it might not comply with their wishes. The costs alone will deplete the value that's there for the family very, very quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So is a will enough? Are there any other documents that someone should also consider having?
Yes. So no, a will's not enough.
Nothing.
And yes, there are more documents. A power of attorney is obviously a very important document. It's all about, though, while you are alive.
Yes.
And when you pass away, a power of attorney dies with you. So, but it's still something that should certainly be considered, and most people would do at the same time as doing their will.
Yep.
But very importantly is your superannuation side of things. So there is a common misconception that people think I've got a will, so that includes my super, and that's just not the case.
Okay.
So the super beneficiary side of it is equally as important. There are a lot of firms out there who will do your will and then for some extra legal fees, they'll give you some advice about superannuation. I'm a big believer that that's not how our firm operate. We include that super advice as part of your will and make sure that no one walks away having a will and not knowing that their super's not protected.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. All right. And can you tell us some horror stories of cases that you've been potentially involved in?
Yes. I love scaring people into why they need to have a will.
Yes.
But it's a sad situation at the same time, because it's sad that you can't fix the problem, because generally when a lawyer finds out there is a problem, it's because the person has passed away.
Yes.
So at that point it's too late to fix it. Hence why you should have it done properly.
Correct.
The first time around. But some horror stories, one that stands out to me is a family of mum, dad, 3 children.
Yep.
Mum and dad separated when the children were quite young, and dad just disappeared from their lives. The kids didn't see him again.
Yep.
So basically mum raises the 3 kids on her own. Mum works hard and all on her own pays off the mortgage on the family home.
Yep.
One of the children is quite unwell, and mum ends up becoming her carer and looking after her while she's still trying to facilitate work and paying off mortgages and things like that. Kids, adults move out of home with the exception of the unwell child who remains being cared for by mum. And mum completely unexpectedly passes away. I don't know, mid-50s, early 60s.
Yes.
So that firstly leaves adult daughter who was relying on mum's care at risk from that perspective. But long story short, mum had a will, left everything to her children. It was a DIY will.
Yep.
So she clearly didn't get any legal advice surrounding that will. When the kids came in to see me, it was basically, mum's got some super, mum's got the house, can you transfer the house to our names? We're all in agreement for unwell child to continue living there. So family all happy and all get along. They get home from a medical appointment one day and there's dad standing on the driveway saying, get out, this is my house.
Wow.
And basically mum owned that house with dad as joint tenants, which essentially takes that property out of her will and it is automatically his as the surviving owner of the property.
Yeah, right.
So all that money she's put into paying out the mortgage, it's all just gone to him.
Yes.
Daughter who needed the accommodation have nowhere to live, and dad's just come in and taken it back. So very easy to not know that that's how it would work. But had she have come in to see a solicitor to do that will, first thing we would have told her was that house is going to your husband who you've not divorced and still own property with.
Yes.
And we would have severed that tenancy to at least guarantee that half that house would be part of her will.
Yes.
So, just that's one that comes to mind. I had another one where 27-year-old, he was out camping with his mates and just completely unexpectedly passed away.
Oh, wow.
He didn't have a will and he had considered a will, and his thoughts on that were, I don't really own anything of value that warrants me having a will at this point in time. But he did have superannuation.
Yep.
And being as young as he was, the death benefit attached to that superannuation was quite high.
Yes.
So there was a large sum of money available on his death in super.
Yep.
He had a beneficiary on his super. And that was to his 2 siblings. But there are only certain people you can put on a super nomination that makes it binding on the super fund.
Okay.
And siblings aren't
Yes.
one of those categories of people. So ultimately the super fund had the discretion to determine where his super was paid, and they made the decision that they were paying his parents, which for most people you'd probably say that's not too bad. But this guy was fostered out at 3 weeks of age and never knew his parents, never saw them again. I believe they were both separated and drug addicts.
Yes.
And they were given the opportunity to disclaim that money basically on moral grounds, and of course they said no.
Yes.
So all of a sudden this money went to 2 people while they were his parents that he never even knew.
Yeah.
And the people he wanted to benefit
Didn't
missed
get
out.
that, yeah.
Yeah. And something, again, so simple that 10 minutes of my time, I could have prevented all of that from happening.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the key in what you're saying is that get a will and get it done properly.
Get it done properly.
Yeah.
Those DIY wills, I mean, they're great, but they're not great enough.
Yes.
They keep us in a job in the courtrooms.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah. All right. Well, that's everything for us for this time around. Thank you for coming in, Beck, to have a
Thanks
chat
for having me.
and explaining, I guess, a little bit more about why you should have a will to protect yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thank
Thanks,
you
guys.
for tuning in to the latest episode of the GSBC podcast. Make sure that you stay tuned via our socials to keep up to date with all the things happening to the Greater Springfield business community.